Just give me a minute. Okay. Hi, Hanan. Hanan is here. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. A very warm welcome to the fourth roundtable on Scaling Future. Across the globe, education is standing at a crossroads. On one side, we have the rapid acceleration of artificial intelligence reshaping how we teach, learn, and lead. On the other side, we are facing pressing questions on governance, safety, and responsibility. Governments, policymakers, and institutions are urgently drafting frameworks to regulate AI. UNESCO has called for a global guidance on the ethical use of AI in education. The EU's AI Act is setting new precedents while schools everywhere from New York to Nairobi are grappling with the challenge of adopting AI tools without compromising learner safety or equity. For educators, these are no longer abstract ideas or policy conversations. They go at the very heart of our work. How do we integrate AI responsibly while safeguarding what matters most, our learners? This is where Skilling Future comes in. We are as a platform dedicated to empowering educators to navigate AI with confidence, curiosity, and care. Through our roundtables, workshops, and fellowship programs, we create spaces for discussing these ideas and trying to figure out that, okay, what is it that all of us can work with? What are practical ideas that go beyond uh, policy aspects that happen given to us? And that's exactly what today is also about. In this roundtable, we will unpack what AI governance really means in practice for schools and educators, how to design safe, ethical, and inclusive AI policies for classrooms, and most importantly, the actionable steps institutions can take now. We're honored to be joined by our distinguished guest, Daire, an AI strategist and learning experience designer who brings deep experience as global perspective to this timely conversation. Her research work, her focus with AI and ethics makes her the perfect speaker for this roundtable where she bridges the gap between classroom practice and what policy basically talks about. And of course, guiding today's dialogue are our hosts, Andy Lucchesi and Shahida Rahman. Together, let's use this space not just to discuss challenges, but to imagine and rebuild solutions shaping an AI-ready, learner-centered future of education. Over to you, Dari.
Hi guys, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. So this is going to be fun. It's a little bit different because I don't have to speak for the entire hour and then answer questions and we can just jump straight in and start having a conversation, which is fun. Um, I don't know if there's any particular place that you guys in particular were thinking of starting, but just looking at kind of the talking points, we were talking about kind of AI governance for schools and then moving into kind of the ethical side of
Yes,
things and then the innovation and safeguarding and stuff like that. So
yes.
there's an awful lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about this one. Hi, Daire. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And for those that are going to watch and listen to this roundtable later on, thank you. This is a much needed conversation. Well, Daire, first of all, I would like to cover the ground for those that are new to AI governance and understanding the concepts and certain general foundational ideas. What does AI governance actually mean for schools in practice?
It depends on what level you are within the school, I guess. I mean, for leaders, for everyone, it means that everyone really needs to understand what AI is. You know, all of your staff, from whatever level they're at, they need to understand what this technology is capable of, what it's not capable of, and like the distinction between the different types of AI, because obviously it's not just generative AI. That's what started the conversation. That's what everyone started getting interested in the technology because people suddenly had this computer that was like talking to them and that was helping them and guiding them in a way that we never had before. But we weren't ever thinking about the fact that we already had AI in our algorithms on YouTube or the way that Amazon makes a recommendation system based on our past experience, kind of past shopping experience. And that's part of AI as well. So AI is like all of this kind of body of different technologies that act independently or semi-independently and or mimic human thought and or human actions. So understanding the different levels of AI, I think, is the first thing. And then how it's going to impact your role within the school, whether it's classroom or it is recruitment or admissions systems, anywhere that there could be an AI system embedded into any of the platforms that you use is something you're going to have to think of as well. So it starts with a very basic of when is AI actually in my school, and where does it kind of, intersect with my workday?
Now, I am always very shocked even that sometimes at this point of the conversation, some educators are still a little bit reluctant and resistant to understand not only AI literacy, but to understand AI governance, which is what we are here today to specifically niche down the conversation and specifically talk about AI governance, right? So perhaps for this term or for those that are planning already their upcoming terms for 2026, if it's your case, if you had to set three priorities this term or for 2026 plans, what would they be in terms of AI governance?
I think I would be focusing on, as a teacher, primarily coming from the classroom and the impact on my students, I would be focusing on the question of human rights, as in the impact of AI, generative AI in particular, because it's the one that kind of the big elephant in the room, the students are using it, the impact that it has on their ability to learn, their learning attainment, and the lack and the responsibility and the role that we have, the ethical and moral responsibility that we have. If you imagine that your voice as a student, when you're learning to develop your voice, right? And we know that I need access to information to develop my thoughts, and it's through conversing with people and everything else I can develop my worldview, right? If I'm within a system like a psychosynthetic system, like an AI system, where I'm conversing with that system and it's reinforcing my ideas, I'm within an echo chamber. So I'm as a teacher, if I don't do something to stop that, I am reducing the possibility of the student to develop a worldwide view. But also, if I don't try and help them approach a more ethical, safe, empowering way of using AI to help me learn. So to see how, okay, within the echo chamber, that's a bad thing, but there is also all these really good things you can do. And I close my eyes and pretend it's not happening and continue to grade the essays as though they were actually written by my students, because no one has told me what to do in this case. And because that's part of the problem. A lot of the time it's because there's no actual guidance in place for the teachers, so they don't know what to do. Then I'm undermining my students' human rights to their own voice. Because if they don't learn what their voice is through thinking, through dialogue, through arguing with my students, I constantly tell them to fight with me. In the class, if I say something that you don't agree with, tell me. Let's have it out. Let's hash it out. Let's discuss. Because that's how they develop their identity. And the bias that is inherent in the AI systems, depending on which one you are, when you consider the fact that they're developed by a certain subset of society in a certain part of the world with certain worldviews that mean that there's underrepresentation or misrepresentation of certain groups. There's reinforcement of other ideas and ideals. And if I, as a student, am living within this bubble created by the dialogue of me talking to the system, and nobody is helping me understand it and decipher it and analyze it, I'm losing so much. So I kind of feel like it's, as a teacher, it's a responsibility. I have that responsibility to help my students find this part. I think that's probably where I focus on first. And then I would say that the systems, we would need to make sure that the systems running the school, kind of do a full audit on the systems running the school, the systems being run, and make up you have kind of a risk evaluation system. So safeguarding, you need to balance the innovation that the technology brings with safeguarding and protection of the students. We've seen a lot of stories recently about the tragedies that can happen when these kids are stuck inside these bubbles.
Yes. I mean, this is actually really important that you bring it up because I mean there is so many pieces of scattered information about this, which I believe causes a lot more noise rather than actually helping the educational ecosystems that we've got out there, especially because most of this, let's be also very aware of the fact that most of these conversations are happening on specific parts of the world where AI have very specific AI governance guardrails. And also in this particular case, there is also a cultural factor there. So this is also something that it's very important. But still, if I am a parent on this other part of the world, let's say Europe, let's say Asia, in Latin America, and I hear that somebody unalives themselves because they, for example, fall in love with an AI companion. Or, for example, if I am at school and I am utilizing for instance, let's say a school tablet that belongs to a school property, and I'm using the school internet that happens to have, let's say, a large language model downloaded. And I start typing things that are initially dangerous for the school and, for example, myself, that is something that it's a huge red flag, right? So these are the things that we as educators have to not only help our stakeholders to understand, and they make the news because actually is one of those very specific cases. It doesn't mean that it's going to affect everybody in the room, right? So this said, who is accountable when AI influences, I know, right? This is the typical question that some of our stakeholders, especially school leaders, the educators, and then, of course, the parents, like, who's accountable? Who is it that, how do I educate my child about the legal aspects of utilizing AI? Because let's be clear for those that are going to listen this later, when we're talking specifically about AI governance, we're talking about the legal aspects of the utilization of everything related and around AI, right? Specifically for us, generative AI, because of course there is a very clear differentiation between AI ethics and AI governance. So in this particular case, who do we make accountable?
So
I know, right?
no. I mean, if it's your own private account, but you're the minor, then it can't be the school. But if you're using it on the school account and there's a surveillance system on the school, which there should be, then the school should have flagged it. So it really kind of comes down to what exactly you're talking about. Did your parents set up your account for you, or did you set it up by yourself? Did the child steal a credit card to pay for the pro account, or are the parents paying for the pro account because they don't understand the technology? Because part of this, like, the responsibility is there for everyone. In terms of a school approved AI, because if you're saying I've downloaded and I've given access to this technology through the school devices, and I've approved the use of this AI tool at a school level according to the AI Act, it's the school and the head of school would be responsible. So the school is an entity represented by the head of school. So that's why we need to do things like, have your AI officer, have your audit, understand what tools you are, recognize and understand how the tools work. But again, that doesn't come into play yet. That's the kind of August, I believe, is the phase of the AI Act when that comes in.
Yes,
And that's
it
only
was
relevant
August.
relative to, and it's only relevant relative to, European Union countries automatically. Anyone else would have to sign up and agree to, similar to the Council of AI treaty, where the Council of Europe treaty on AI. where countries can sign up and adapt it. So other countries are adapting copycat or similar rules or developing their own rules, maybe some cases using the EU AI Act as a kind of basis or as a guideline. Others are developing guidelines in relation to their own governance systems and their own laws. So it kind of really depends, again, because it is based on the legal system of the country and the area you're
Mhm.
in. So for us in European Union countries, it would be the school represented by the head of school.
Mm.
But the implementation, like we're in the beginning of the implementation phase. So it's not like the school is, kind of anyone's going to be coming after school leaders just yet.
Exactly. So, what I'm hearing from your end is that basically it is not only important but extremely necessary to have these open conversations and, take the title of AI governance as if it's something on a pedestal and something very difficult to understand because every time that we talk about things that have any legal aspect or close to it, everybody freaks out because it's like, oh no, the terms are going to be like super difficult. It's not for me, right? So what I'm hearing from your end is like, no, we're all responsible in this conversation, students included, of course, because they are part of the users, the community of users, and we have to make it very clear. We have to make the rules of the game very clear for our kids. What is it that the school is, accountable for? The students, the parents, and everybody involved, right? Is that where we're getting from you?
Right,
Perfect.
exactly. And we need to have conversations, again, with everyone, and with the students in the first place. We need someone who is willing to have that conversation with them and talk to them about it and sort of like say, this is this tool, as opposed to the bans that we've been seeing. On
Mm-hmm.
the one hand, we've got schools that are banning everything. We ban all of the technology, ban the AI, ban the everything. Others are like, we'll implement the AI detectors. That will stop them because like we're going after them for cheating, as opposed to building a system of trust. The only way you can build a system of trust is by having an open conversation. So back to that idea of what three things you'd be looking at. If I had to choose three things to focus in, one would be trust, developing that system of trust where all of your stakeholders are involved in the conversation, whether that's through an information night for the parents, a workshop with the students, staff training, obviously with your teachers, the staff training for the leaders. Quite often the teachers know more about the impact of it in the classroom, obviously, than the leaders. So everyone needs to have training. So yeah, we said trust, the voice, the idea of the student, the development they're learning, and then equity. Just balancing it out, being aware of the bias, understanding about the impact of different on different communities of this technology as it's generated, whether that's your representation, digital colonialism, the impact on the environment, equity, whatever it is, and looking at how bias kind of can be put into and injected into the life cycle and the impact that has on everyone. Those would be my three. But trust, definitely, in terms of trying to understand the governance. If we don't have trust within our educational community and our educational ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
where half of the community is going after students for like cheating with the tools, and the other half is turning a blind eye because they don't know what to do. It's leaving the students are caught in the middle and they don't know where do I go? Who do I go? Who do I talk to? What can I use? What can I not use? And that's where we're going to end up with more problems. And then eventually fall foul of the law, and then eventually end up with law with legal cases
Yeah.
where nobody really knows who's to blame, who's to be responsible.
Yeah. But it's not only about like who's blaming who or like you've got to do this part of the bargain and I'll do just this other part. I think that it's a matter of balance, right? I mean,
Yeah,
since you've mentioned, like in like the tools and also in the chat, Nikki Wallace, for example, she's got like this really interesting comment that I think that adds on to what you were saying. Nikki, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna read it, okay? Yes? All right. Nikki says, I agree that the tool matters, more or less what you were saying, like the implementation of the tools in the school. And the school should be thoughtful about how to implement the model in the academic settings. It's important to be able to see what the kids are doing. So basically, this adds on to what you were saying. But then here I start wondering, and it's if I had like a picture, when I see schools and the reality right now, it's typical like when, let me put my hand down because automatically it puts it up. It's when I see the typical image of, people taking 3 steps at the time instead of like walking it and going through it step by step. And this is why we already are talking about schools without tools, without even talking about fundamentals or talking about structure or talking about a plan, a strategy, right? Like training. So we are like, forget about that as if that it's not necessary. Let's just buy the car and then we will see how we'll learn how to drive, right? That is the feeling that I've got. And for me, this is absolutely bunkers. I don't know if you are on the same boat as I
That's
am.
actually really funny that you'd mentioned the car thing. I posted on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago
Oh.
a reaction to another poster who, for the life of me, I was not able to find. It was like a second or third or fourth connection.
Hmm.
Um, for the life of me, I cannot find who it was, and I really wanted to go back and tag them because it was an interesting kind of metaphor. And they were saying like, we don't have to let kids use AI. We don't have to give them AI literacy yet. We wouldn't let them drive a Formula One car at the age of 10. Like, and I was like, yeah, but that's exactly why we need to give them literacy. We don't necessarily give the primary school kids access to the tools. But if you think about it, kids grow up in a city, they have constant access to the rules of the road. They have constant access to pre-training of the road of the driving system. So his metaphor was like, you give them the go-kart before you give them the Formula One. Absolutely, 100%. You start with a go kart, but in the meantime, they're in the car with you, and they see that you stop when there's a red light, and they see that you let the people pass, and they see that you don't overtake when it's dangerous, and they have conversations. When you think about it, kids are constantly asking their parents about the driving and things like that.
Hmm.
So what we've essentially done with with kids in particularly middle school and high school where they're accessing these tools while a lot of teachers aren't available, and when they're in so many cases there's no strategy, no plan or anything. It's like we're just looking out the window and be like, oh look, there's a big fast car in my driveway, wonder where that came from. Then we
Hmm.
realize that it's your kid who has the keys to the big fast car, and instead of doing something about it, we're like, close the curtains, I don't want to deal with. That's how we began the situation. Now we've got some of them who are like, okay, stop, kid. We don't want you driving in the scary car just yet because you're not able to drive. Let's go and have a play. Let's have a walk around the street and learn the rules of the road. Then we can go and play in the go kart. And then there are others who are just like, yeah, sure, off you go. Play with it because we can play together in the big car and figure it out together. So it's like again finding the balance. You do need to teach them the tools
Hmm.
and start working with them in the tools already because it is the world that they're here. It's not the future, it's already here.
Hmm.
But you also have to be working on a plan. You have got to have a plan. Whatever that plan or strategy is, whatever it looks like for your context, in alignment with the different rules and guidelines that are available for the different world areas that we're in, you have to do both. You have
Yeah.
got to protect them from the big car, but at the same time, you have to let them see how it works. Even if you're not giving them the car straight
Yeah.
away, you might be saying stay in the go kart, but you have got to let them see how it works because the world that they live in is going to be full of cars. It's not going to be full of go karts.
Now, this conversation makes a lot of sense, for those educators and stakeholders that have already been, early adopters and have at least a little bit of curiosity about what's going on. Because again, I mean, this is a very tricky conversation. It has so many angles to cover, but when it comes of you being the educator and being the responsible of this group of minor slash users, because in the end they are users of these tools already. I do believe that there should be an intent, at least, an intention there to understand your reality. I always tell my teachers whenever I go to teacher trainings is like, listen, if you're not doing this because you're curious about it and you still believe that Skynet is going to happen to you, and if you know, you know, people our generation know who Skynet was. And if you don't know, Terminator. I'm just going to tell you that. So, if you are still with that belief in your head, at least do it for the legal reasons. Let me give you some very simple example. This is something that happened in 2024. There was this very cute TikTok going on social media about this educator that showed the beautiful pictures of their children. This is a happen in elementary school, and it was like, how is it that their kids, these kids, would look like when they grow up? Conceptually, it's beautiful, right? Because it's sort of like amplifying the vision board, etc., etc. Legally, not so much, right? So in this particular case, this is where I say to my educators out there, guys, your intention is not, your good intentions are not going to protect you in front of a court. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
going to protect you in front of, you know, the parents that probably are going to go crazy mad because you took a picture of their child that you didn't have a permission in the first place, for example. Imagine that you'd even ask for that permission. So there are so many steps behind the actions that we have to take. Now, let's move forward to the next thing. So, in this particular case, if you have to say one or two things for the teacher and the student in terms of utilizing tools in general in school, especially when the plan and the strategy is not clear, what would that be?
So what I did in my school before we had like a plan at the beginning, well, we were working on the strategy and we're working on the policy and everything, and I'm doing it again this year because it just works really well. I created a kind of a learning contract, and in the learning contract that I was agreement that I was making, I asked the parents to sign,
Mm.
are you okay with me teaching your kid how to use AI? Are you like, sign for permission, give me permission, because then it's not my responsibility, you know, to make that decision. It's not my place to make that decision. And because everything was still, the AI Act hadn't come out yet, it was all still very kind of, we don't know what's going on. So maybe the wording would have to be changed compared to in the first version now that we've got more guidance, obviously, and more legal kind of, structures and things like that. But at the time, it was just, do I have permission to work with this technology with your child? Because it's not my place, it's not my responsibility, it's not my right. I have no right to make that decision for a parent. So maybe the parents don't want you. And at the beginning in particular, that's okay. We don't understand it. Now, I think the majority of them are aware of the fact that if they have a phone, they have access to to AI. So it's maybe less important. But I still want to make sure that I have proof that I have communicated that we will be talking about AI and we will be using the tools. And then the other thing that I did is that I would use an AI where I can see what they're doing. So that's what Nikki said in the comment there.
Mhm.
And I would be, if I was adopting a tool, if I was a leader and I was adopting a tool, school-wide tool, that would be one thing I would really want. I would want access to their chats. Um, and I would want explainability. I would want to understand what they're doing, and I kind of have a safeguarding system of whereby there's worrying chats going on, it's
Mm.
flagged, it's stopped. And that's the setup I had for the AI kind of space that I was using in project-based learning last year, where they would get kind of their chat would be paused if they were going into topics that were kind of, concerning. It worked and it didn't work in that the conversation the project was called Voices of Controversy, and we were analyzing geopolitics. That meant they were getting flagged all the time because they were asking questions about things that were controversial. And then it was like, this person is using this word, which is a racist word, for example, but maybe this person was analyzing racial tensions in country A or B, so obviously they might be asking, what does this word mean? What are the connotations of it? Where does it come from? Why is it being used as an insult? But the system just flagged them. So obviously these are things that need to be kind of smoothed out, but it's important to kind of have those safeguards in place, because let's say the student was going beyond just the research, which they can do. I mean, particularly teenagers, preteens. I'm working in middle school and junior high, so that's the age group where it's very funny to say inappropriate things. So there's also that. So I think that's definitely something that I would be focusing on in terms of the safeguarding. Then in terms of the purpose, make sure there's actually a valid reason to use the tool when you're choosing to use the tool. Don't just use it for the sake of using it, unless you're doing like an AI literacy course. So if you're doing it AI literacy, yes, you use the tool because you're teaching them how to use the tool. If you're using it within your content, within your course, within your kind of year's work, make sure it makes sense to use it. Don't make sure you protect their learning. So again, back to that voice, you're not allowing them to rely too much. You can kind of pushing them to reflect and to use metacognition and to ensure that they're still learning and to think about how they're using the AI. So that to develop the skills, because there are some great skills to be used, particularly for, let's say, second language learners or young learners who are still learning to communicate. They're still learning to recognize what is it that I'm supposed to be communicating? What's the main point of my message? Because, the better you prompt, the better results you get. That's teaching them how to be a better communicator, realistically. It's not even prompt engineering. It's just clear communication. So it depends on what it is you're focusing on. You can use it to help them learn basic skills, more advanced skills, and just even maybe give them alternatives in terms of content. So
Yeah.
those would be the two main things I would be focusing on as a teacher in the classroom.
And let's take the conversation a little bit broader from what you're saying, because, for example, then, of course, the teacher cannot independently, like make the decision of like, oh, I'm going to use this. At least ideally, the educator shouldn't, like say, I'm going to use this ABC AI tools in the classroom, right? So in this particular case, when is the school that is the one that actually makes the decision to use specific tools that perhaps sometimes unfairly flag a student and that sort of thing. This is another conversation that also has to be it has to be taken very seriously, because of course you have mentioned in your intervention that there is so many different nuances that can actually, turn on the red flags and activate the warnings in the system. So then you were trying to do good because you were trying to implement the AI, etc., as everybody else, but then you get to the point where you made it even, dangerous. You made it, a game that hit a wall. So in that particular case, because I see it all the time, what would you advise, the school to do in that particular case? And then we will move on.
So on a teacher level, I had access, I had oversight, and I was able to go in and free up their conversation. So I would review what they said, what they'd been talking about. I'd say, okay, this is fine. This is not anything to worry about. And I could reactivate the conversation so that they could continue to continue working. As a school, I think that in terms of the choice of tools in particular, I was making individual choices, because at that point we didn't have a system. We established a kind of a committee. So we established a group of teachers and the kind of the IT staff and everything that were working together, trying to identify kind of the plan and the protocol for AI adoption in the school. And unfortunately, these were all people who were already working full-time roles, like as a teacher, full-time here, full-time there. So it's like a part-time role. Now, as the AI Act, we're a European school, so as the AI Act kind of moves further into its stages of implementation, this kind of voluntary committee is not going to be enough. So the school should have an AI officer, and a team of people, even if it's only just 2 people, depending on the size of the school, someone who's dedicated to checking out the tools, who has the time to properly check out the tools and to properly understand and to have that conversation with the deployer and to run that risk assessment and to find out and have those conversations with the different people who are selling them tools. Say, okay, well, we have this concern, and this concern. What can you tell me about it? You know, and there is, that will be a role that we're going to have. You know, it's going to have to be a full-time role, particularly if we're going to be implementing a lot of these AI embedded tools into our systems. And if you are using technology that has access to the internet, your students have access to an AI of some sort.
I totally love the fact that you're suggesting / like, please do it kind of thing, like to create this job position where we have our AI officer in the school, because it is this kind of position that I believe it's not just going to be necessary, but everybody is going to be thankful for. It's sort of like in the 90s, and I believe that it was actually in the 80s, where school counselors like that had a much more profile in psychology, turned a little bit, because the school counselor in the past, like in my mother's time, it was more like, okay, the gym teacher is like, okay, you're doing fine with life, just go ahead, right? More or less, that was the console. Yeah, the school counselor that you had at the time, right? And she was in a good school. Imagine, those people that don't even have access to that privilege, right? So moving fast forward now, where we probably might not have, for example, the budget for that. Because let's be realistic, if you're working in public schools, or if you're working in a school, or if you're part of a community where that budget is not going to be allocated for that, is there like any sort of pointers or advice that you would like to, share, so you don't feel so hopeless when it comes to this AI governance or / AI ethics matter for schools?
So obviously, I would not be pushing the idea that we should, just kind of pass the hot potato on until it lands at the teacher. But the reality is that that's probably going to happen in a lot of cases. I've been on conversations. I've been in, kind of overheard comments from school leadership to other members, like, oh, we just let the teachers make the final decision. They're the ones who know what's necessary in their classroom, which is true. We are, as teachers in the classroom, we know what works best for our students. We should be making the decision as to, yes, I need that type of tool as opposed to this type of tool. But that only works if we have a knowledge about the tool. So it starts with, again, AI literacy and training for your staff, and that's a non-negotiable. Whether, it's a non-negotiable because the AI Act tells us in European schools that it's a non-negotiable, but it's a non-negotiable for any school that is teaching children in this day and age. If you are in an area that has access to this technology, those kids are using the technology, and you need to know what the technology does. So regardless of budget, for an ideal, having an AI officer, having someone who's in charge of safeguarding all of this, all of the staff need to understand the technology, because then they can make more informed choices about the different tools, and how to use them as well, and what's allowed. So again, going back to the story about the teacher in the kindergarten pictures, lovely idea, fantastic. My main worry from the first was like, why are you videoing these kids and putting it on the internet without their parents' permission? That's not an AI thing. That's just and then do I have
GDPR matter, right?
GDPR matter, right? And it's just a privacy in general, but also it's just like basic common decency. I'm not going to post your kids'
Thank you for not saying common sense. Thank you for not saying common sense. It's kind of like, yes,
I was almost going to.
Yes, common decency fits better. I agree with
you. So and then there's okay, you generated these images. This is a really cute idea. did you have permission to take the picture, but also did you have permission to upload the picture? Was it within a closed situation where, the data of that child is protected? Or is the data of that child now floating around? Is that image floating around somewhere in the training manuals of the AI? Do
Mm-hmm.
you know how to turn off the training settings so that your AI is protected? But even still, we don't know if it is protected. I remember a couple of weeks ago, months at this point, wow, time has flied. Time's been flying. You and I were having a conversation in one of the master classes, I believe, about the case where someone's chat appeared in someone else's chat history, and it was Clara who posted it a
Yeah, I
couple of
think
months
that
ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was not, I don't know. I don't think that it was me. I would have remember.
But we were talking about it. Maybe it was myself and Sana. I can't remember. But I do remember I was having a conversation. I
Yeah,
think it was
it was
Sana,
us.
yeah? Yeah?
It was with Clara. Clara talked about it, and
Yeah.
interestingly, it was Matthew Carabinos, I think so. He said that okay, his sister-in-law was looking into a logo like this and branding, and I think so. Those are the chats that have gotten crossfired.
Yeah, so they kind of mixed up. And then a couple of months later, I actually half of my chat disappeared. I was working on something. I closed down the computer, go to bed, everything else. The following day, come back. I want to keep going on this thing I was working on. Poof, disappeared. Took me about 20 minutes to like regenerate it again, because obviously it was all in here. It wasn't like that I was doing the work, getting the machine to do the work for me. But the chat just disappeared. Where did it go? And I have all of the settings the way that I'm doing the best I can. I've ticked all the boxes and all of the different things that I'm supposed to put on to make sure that my data is as safe as it possibly can be. But if we don't understand how this works, and nobody's really telling us exactly how it works, because we have to try and figure it out for ourselves. That means we can't be 100% sure of what we're doing with the data. So we need to not have, maybe we should try and have common sense, but it's not necessarily the easiest thing. We definitely need to be worried about the data and the safeguarding and stuff like that, and just keep that in mind. Always ask questions, I suppose. Do I understand this? Do I know where it's going? You know, I think I got sidetracked with the
No, I don't
story
think
there.
that you, no, I don't believe that you got sidetracked. It's just that honestly, it is so broad, the conversation, and so tricky. I wouldn't say complex because I would rather say tricky because there is like this new tool and tool app, like look at the new shiny toy all the time.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, and I think that that is like sort of like um putting on a blanket to cover the fact, the very important fact that we don't understand where the data really is going, what it is that is actually training, how is it? I mean, we've got a fundamental idea about what is happening, of course, but for us that we are early AI adopters when it comes to this new AI generation, but for those that, of course, have been working in artificial intelligence most of their professional lives, and those are the conversations with the people that I have been having to, because I don't have a tech background and it really freaks me out to talk about things that I don't know. So I always go back and I interview and I talk and I study, and I really become obsessed about this sort of things until I start understanding, right? So
Hmm.
what actually leads me to this is that we don't know anything and we are just only on the tip of the iceberg. I think that we're just talking about the snow on the iceberg, not even the iceberg, itself. So this is what it's so worrying about, right? That at this stage where we are right now, we are in a moment where we're going to make so many ugly mistakes, so unfortunate mistakes, that we just have to, it's going to be part of the journey, right? But what I am worried about is that are we going to take as much time to learn from those mistakes as we did with 25 years or plus, when the internet started, right, in the 90s, in the late 90s. I hope not. I don't know what it's your feeling related to that, but I hope it doesn't take that long.
feel like
Oh
not
my gosh.
everyone. I don't think everyone has learned from the mistakes that we made with the internet or with social media. I think we're still making a lot of those mistakes. I think we need to be asking more questions. We need to be trying to understand it more. All of us, the responsibility is on all of our shoulders, definitely, to question more, and to have the conversations. I think we can't take a head in the sand approach, which I think is what happened with social media in particular. And that's probably the biggest mistake that kind of, if you look at recent years, it's having a huge impact on students and on people in general, and kind of creating this vacuum and this bubble that people are living within. The negative potentials without capitalizing on the potential on the positives as well. Like, the two mistakes contemporarily that, combined with this wonderful lost opportunity, but also serious problems long term, both in a societal and maybe a personal, depending interpersonal levels, of various generations, various age groups. And we do risk that. We risk running, kind of running that into that same situation. I think that we have to take advantage of the new technology. It offers us the possibility to completely change all that is not working with education. Not necessarily fix it, but change it, because we have to look at it in a new way. We have to. It forces us to look at things in a way that we didn't have to before, if we want to avoid making those mistakes. Otherwise, we just repeat the mistakes or make worse mistakes.
Which is probably the case for some, countries, provinces, states. That might be the case. But hey, what is important is, like, for example, I love that Nikki Wallace, again, she's leaving a very, very interesting comment here. I hope that it's okay, Nikki, that I go ahead and read it. She mentions, I am so curious to know what is the best practice for AI literacy. Who has created the framework that works the best, or at least is the most flexible? There are so many out right now. So that is also, I'm going to go to the last part. Like, there are so many out there right now, but there are, I do believe, and maybe you agree with me with this one, that yes, there are so many out there, but still there are specific leading voices that are the ones that we actually have to follow. Let's go from there.
Yeah, definitely. I would say the competencies for teachers and students from UNESCO, that's a really good one, because it gives us a really broad idea without necessarily being a curriculum for literacy. It kind of gives us the objectives, right? This is where we want people in this role as teachers to be able to be, to be able to do in the next couple of years, and this is what we expect students to be able to do. So combining that then with the OECD or with the AI Lit, kind of the various different things, you can almost like pick and choose from the different frameworks to create something that works for your context, because not all of the literacy programs are going to work in all of the contexts. If I don't have access to computers in my classroom, and there are hundreds of thousands of students who don't have access to devices in their classrooms, I'm not going to be able to learn coding with Scratch, in order to code the machine so that I learn how we train AI data sets. So I need to look at the end game and then maybe say, okay, what is the objective there? The objective is understanding how AI gets trained, how AI systems get trained. Can I do an offline version of that? Can I do a card game that helps me learn the same concepts? So looking at it in terms of learning objective, skill possibility, like the thing that the person should be able to do at the end of it, as opposed to this lesson plan teaches this type of AI literacy. And then adapting to your context. I am very privileged in that we have iPads in the school that I can book, bring into the classroom, and have kids have access to their technology. So I can actually say, okay, we're going to have a lesson where I'm going to create an AI space. We're going to work through it, and we're going to work through a specific skill, right? Not all teachers have that. Not all students have that.
Yeah.
So finding creative ways, to create maybe an offline, as we said, or videos. Maybe you have access to a projector and you can, kind of make a video. You can do it at home, make a video, and then get them to create kind of a paper version of
Yeah.
the same sort of thing, or to draw out a workflow. Maybe you can draw out a workflow because you don't have access to creating a workflow, or use building blocks. You can use the Arduino, or the Crea cubes. There's lots of smaller kind of pieces of technology that can mimic these things, even if you don't actually use an AI.
Yeah.
But it all comes to understanding what the end game is, I think, what the learning objective and the skills that they need to learn are going to be.
Usually in our roundtables, we have sort of like an open mic. I mean, so people have been participating on the chat, so that's totally fine. So I always leave some space for those who would like to open their mic. Sana, Hanan, Nikki, if you guys have like any specific question where you would like to address directly, please go ahead. This is your moment. While the people in the audience start, think their possible questions or statements or feedback, I would like to remind you that our next roundtable as always, is going to be the first week of the beginning of the new month. So that is going to be for November the 5th. So same time, we still have to discuss what time it's, if 6:30 or 7:30. It really depends on our beautiful speakers. Like for example, in this case with Daire, we decided that it was going to be at 7:30. So because it was a lot more comfortable for people around here in Europe. So it depends on who is it that we're going to have as a speaker next time. All right, so I hope that those in the audience have already their questions, statements, feedback. Go ahead, open your mics.
I have a question. I guess I don't want to be hogging the airspace, but I teach at a project-based, competency-based school, and we were like told to like just try any and everything. Let's see what sticks, right? And so I'm very worried about what Pandora's box we've opened up. I have learned about tool sets that have more governance over them, that are more appropriate for our setting. But of course, they're expensive, right? And so, and also, who's going to pay for that? So there's that entity. So what we are doing right now, we are currently trying to, in a study through challenge success, try to understand, like, are kids going to use this for good or evil, right? Like, what are the ultimate outcomes of what our high school students, how will AI influence them, and what are the policies we need to create to navigate them to go into the right direction? And I know it's kind of like they say putting the cart before the horse, or whatever, however they say that, but like, it's like we're having to like go back and like, okay, now we've unleashed the beast. Now how do we rein it back in? Because of all of, now that we understand the tools better, like that's a learning that I am finding myself in. And I guess I don't have a question per se, but more making that statement. But it is very tricky and challenging right now to like, understand what are the next set of policies I need to implement at a school where it's already been opened up for everything. Like, how do you even go backwards to like say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have been so open, but now maybe we need to be more thoughtful about like how our kids are using AI. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. I think one thing I will say is at least it was, the direction came from leadership, and all of the teachers adopted the same, okay, let's open the doors. At least the students weren't confused, as opposed to other schools where you might have patchwork systems of this classroom, everything's open. This classroom, we're not allowed to do anything, which really confuses them, I think that having honest conversations, it comes down to trust, building a trust situation. Have those honest conversations with the students. Talk to them about kind of the impact that using AI is having on them and how they're using AI. I developed a rubric to kind of focus on this idea of trust, voice, and equity with them. I have So basically, it's called the Student Author Voice rubric. It focuses on their learning and their voice, um, and how they feel their interaction with AI is impacting their ability to think and reflect and discuss their topics. Kind of my main question is, when you read over your work, does it sound like you or does it sound like AI? Because if it sounds like AI to you, it probably sounds like AI to me as well, or maybe even more so. And okay, you got your activity done. So you get an A. Then what happens? Later on in the year, we have to remember this information. Do you remember the information? So I talk to them about the studies that are being done, and I talk to them about the impact. And then I ask them to assess themselves. I was like, this is the rubric I'm going to be using. Let's go through it. Let's go what it means, go through what it means. I'm going to be assessing your writing based on this. But before you give it to me, I want you to assess your writing based on this, and reflect on it. And I did that last year, and there were, of course, students who quite clearly had written with AI. The wording was just so evidently AI. Because I teach second language students, a lot of my majority of my learners are second language learners. So they're, kind of, they speak to me with like an A2 or B1 level of English, which would be like upper intermediate, intermediate. Then maybe they produce a C1 or C2 level. There was one kid I was like, this is better than anything I would write in the first go. Like, I'd have to edit this to get it to that level. And you're telling me you don't even know how to ask me to go to the toilet properly. And you're telling me this is your work. And, they laugh about it and they admit it when you catch them out. But the majority of the students, I think statistically, it was like 85 or 86% of the students showed some level of ethical approach to their AI in their reflections. There was obviously the kid who, with his broken English when he speaks to me, perfect English in this written piece, all about how using the rubric led me to reflect on the impact that AI was having on my learning attainment and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, no, it didn't. You generated that whole thing. I understand that. That's cool. But like, those kids, they're going to cheat regardless. They were cheating before there was AI. They were finding the shortcuts before there was AI. But then having this activity, building that trust, meant that kids who maybe in the past would have been looking for the shortcuts, they weren't anymore, because they were like, I've realized the impact this is going to have on me. And then the ones who were going to be well behaved and do the work anyway, they really got into it. They really developed a better understanding of the impact. And once they have an understanding of the impact it has, they're less likely to use it in a negative way. That's at least what I've found over the last 2 years in my classroom. But again, we're at early days, so it's so hard to tell, because it is really very much a case of few of us who are actually adopting and then sharing the skills, sharing the findings, sharing the research, sharing what it is we're doing, so that we can start creating that kind of understanding and communal kind of knowledge base and practical approaches.
I absolutely loved, Nikki's sort of like statement, question, slash of everything there, and what you said, Daire, about, because for me, what resonates the most is the fact that those kids that had a stronger set of values, because it's inherent in them, because it is from home, from school, that they have reinforced that those are the ones that, from where I see it, had a better chance in the AI era. Now, that is something that, of course, has to be developed because, unfortunately, as a human code, we understand certain things that culturally and as humanity itself, we have, for centuries practice, right? But these are things that have to be still fine-tuned into our new generations. And I believe, since Nikki has been talking about, like, okay, which frameworks can we use? I find UNESCO's frameworks open enough to be applicable globally. So
Yeah,
yeah, right. So I
yeah.
feel because, for example, when we talk about the EU AI Act, when we talk about GDPR, when we talk about, for example, FERPA, that's very local, okay? And sometimes it niches down. It sort of like closes the specifics that maybe you were looking for your reality, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I would say go to, and that's what I was looking when I was here on my computer. Actually, I had it on my phone, and is the AI competency framework for students and the AI competency framework for teachers.
yeah.
They're neutral enough that they can be just applicable as this really beautiful blueprint that you can use and sort of like recycle for your own realities and environment. So I think that if you want to start somewhere to give it some sort of like sense to the chaos that it's around you, I would start there, and then I would apply the rest. Yep.
Definitely, definitely. I agree. Yeah, 100%. Because they're adaptable, and
They're
they
they're
give you those end games, particularly as Nikki was saying, she's in a competencies-based environment. So, it's perfect. You've got the approach already.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that they're actually quite a delight to read because they're not heavy. There are so many things as educators that you can do with them. I mean, imagine that, for example, this is just an idea that I'm going to throw out there for those that are planning their not this term, but 2026 plans. Just go ahead, read them, and try to based on your school's ecosystems reality, go ahead and analyze it in the way that you know that will work. For example, elementary, and I am including elementary because this AI literacy has to start from early stages because they are already our kids in
Absolutely.
elementary are the ones that are going to be AI natives. Forget about being AI digital natives. Now they are AI natives, right? So that is
Yeah,
food for thought,
absolutely.
right? So we have to find ways utilizing that blueprint in a way that it serves them and meet them where they are. And then, of course, we have to twig it to middle school and then, of course, high school. That is what I would do as an educator for my students. So with that note, Daire, before we leave, what is it that you would like to leave us, like some words of wisdom before we go?
Words of wisdom.
Hmm.
I really should have thought of a closing soundbite remark. Um, I think that governance has to go beyond compliance. I think that, we can't just be following rules for the sake of following rules and ticking boxes. And I'm thinking again, obviously, I'm thinking within my localized AI Act kind of, mentality being that I know what's coming for schools. And I'm worried that a lot of schools will just rush to create the documentation that they need to be able to show to the, kind of when the government comes knocking to say, yes, we have applied the AI Act, this is what we've done, and we've got all the documents to show it, we've ticked all the boxes and we've stamped all the things that we need to stamp, and it's all good. And we have to go beyond just compliance, and we have to really look at the kind of the impact that doing or not doing anything, whatever it is you're doing or not doing within an AI reality and the education space. So if you're ignoring it, if you're not ignoring it, if you're applying a detection tool, if you're not applying a detection tool, what is the long-term kind of ramification? And it has to be daily, you know. The government it has to be a lived reality within the school, and the entire community needs to be on board. Everyone needs to know what they're doing. There should be a charter. We need to know the rubrics. We need to know who's following, kind of the practices that make it safe. Everyone needs to be on the same page.
Mm.
And then for the deployers and the development and the industry, they have to make ethical choices,
Yeah.
you know, and not just sell your tool. And I think this is where having a person in charge of making the decision about what tools we adopt and what tools we don't adopt
Mm.
means that we need to involve teachers in the design because they know what the problems of the classroom are. They know what the learning problems are. They know what the skills that their students need, and they can tell you straight away, yes, this design will be helpful, or no, you think you're solving a problem, but that problem does not actually exist in my classroom,
Mm.
or in any classroom, whatever. So involve teachers, have conversations with schools, have a teacher on your design team, a team, or have a consultant talk to you about the actual learning that's required so that you can develop these tools in a more kind of ethically and pedagogically sound kind of way, and design according to the most stringent of the rules. Because if you design, if we've got like 5, 6, 7 different sets of rules across the globe, if you design to the most stringent set of rules, you're going to be hitting all of the compliance in all of the other areas, right?
Yeah.
And that means you just have one product. You don't have to change it as you change geographical region. I think that would be.
So in other words, everybody, we can do better. And
yes,
we
and we
have
have to. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we have to do better. And we know better too. That's why I always feel that sometimes these bad decisions comes out of laziness rather, than like actually because we have the possibilities to do better. We and sometimes it really bothers me when they just decide to just go the other way around. Like it was so easy. It was so easy to just go the other way. Anyways, thank you so much for the conversation. I hope that for those that are going to listen to this later on, or watch it if you have the time to watch it, this is a lot. We have unpacked today a lot of things. We have discussed many things that perhaps have been in your mind. I hope that we helped in one way to at least maybe solve part of it or give you a good start. So, Daire, we are very grateful for your help today. And well, we're going to see each other around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for having me.
Thank
It
you.
was really great. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Diary. Thank you.
See you everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.